Thank you for the opportunity to present our research here. And before we show all you what lies beneath our presentation title, let's start with a little historical insight about the place where the project was born, the Latvian War Museum. The Latvian War Museum was founded in 1916 in relation to the First World War's events within the territory of Latvia. In 1937, the construction work began for a new museum building. In 1940, this building was finished and integrated within a larger complex of the museum. At the time, it might have been considered one of the most modern museum buildings in the country. The storage rooms were in the central part of the building, so that none of the storage walls would also be the outer wall of the building, hence creating a suitable and stable climate environment for the historical items of the museum. Later that year, the museum was closed due to the occupation of Latvia. Museum's collection then was scattered between different museums and archives. Some of the items are still considered to be missing because there is no information about their location. From 1957 to 1919, the Latvian Soviet Socialist Republic's Museum of Revolution was this building. During this time, the main goal in compromising museum's collection was the achievements of socialism in every aspect of Soviet life. Quantity was crucial criteria in selection of museum items. In the collection, there might have been a lot of identical items, at the same time ignoring the capacity of preserving them. In 1990, the Latvian War Museum was re-established, inheriting all the historical items from the previous collection. The museum's special capacity has not changed since 1940, but the quantity of the items has grown tremendously. Every year, up to 200 additional items supplement the Latvian War Museum's textile and leather collections. They might have different degree of preservation. There are items that are relatively new, and then there are items that are outworn, dirty, with big holes and other damages. For storing historical items nowadays, a museum uses the room that after the original project was intended to be a storage room. Because of the lack of space, the museum also uses the basement rooms. In 2016, Faculty of Biology, University of Latvia, in cooperation with Latvian War Museum, researched the biodegradation process of textile and leather items caused by fungi. Items were selected after visual observation. Dirty spots and changes in the tone of color were the biggest signals that made researchers suspicious of fungi pollution. Altogether, 38 textile and leather items were microbiologically researched from the third floor storage room and storage room in the basement, the exhibition of the First World War, and the novelties of the museum collection. The items' condition of use can be considered as extreme because they include the First World War and Second World Wars, as well as nowadays global military missions. Samples were taken from the textile and leather items using sterile cotton swabs. Then the samples were bred for 10 to 15 days in a particularly coefficient environment for the growth of the fungi. From the growth of the spores and hyphs in the fungi samples, the genera of fungi to which they belong was determined. It also helped to draw conclusions about the extent of the pollution. On 33 from 38 items, 11 genera of fungi were discovered: Penicillium, Mucor, Aspergillus, Phoma, Trichoderma, Chaetomium, Aureobasidium, Cladosporium, Gilmaniella, Geosmithia, and Acrimonium. Also, one fungi group was discovered, Sterile Mycelium, where fungi spores are not present but only hyphs. Most frequent ones of these genuses were Mucor and Penicillium, which are also the most prevalent ones, not only in temperate climate of Latvia, but also in the most common European countries. The research demonstrated that in changeable conditions of environment, biodegradation process evolves faster. Hence, the compounds of the material are breaking down much faster if the microorganisms are present. From all the samples that were taken, the storage room in the basement showed the largest generic number of fungi. The research also showed that it is necessary to pay attention to the novelties of the museum collections. Fungi were found in all 7 research items. Mucor and penicillium fungi species were found on cotton textile. The results showed that fungi have been evolving already during the time of the usage of storage of the items before they settled in the storage room of the museum. From the textile materials, fungi mostly manifest in cotton and linen fibers, affirming that natural fibers are the most suitable environment for the microorganisms to degrade. Cotton and woolen were very common materials that was used to make military clothing and accessories until the Second World War, but also microorganisms are more present in natural fibers than in synthetic ones because of the deficiency of nutriments. The development process of fungi was also discovered in artificial and synthetic fibers. Speaking of genera of fungi, it is important to emphasize yet again that the most common fungi genera in our environmental climate, and henceforth also on textile and other items, is Penicillium, Mucor, Trichoderm, and Aspergillus. From these all discovered 11 genera of fungi, Mucor is the most intensively affects the changes in tone of color. Penicillium with Mucor are fastest growing fungi genera, and Trichoderm and Mucor are the most toxic ones. In third floor storage room, 7 textile items were researched. On the items in this storage room, 3 fungi genera were discovered: Penicillium, Mucor, and Trichoderm. In this table, it is possible to see that Mucor is the dominating fungi genera, which is quite understandable because it is one of the most common fungi genera in our environmental climate, like I mentioned before. And about the basement storage room, 30 textile and leather items were researched from 2 basement storage rooms. In these basement storage rooms, variety of fungi were more visible. In these storage rooms, textile, leather, and other material items were researched. Also, the climate conditions were worse in the moment of sampling than in the third floor storage room. The humidity level in the rooms was particularly elevated, and gray spots were visible on some of the storage cardboard boxes in the room. What you see in this table clearly affirms scientifically approved theory in praxis that elevated humidity level and even the presence of water are very favorable conditions for fungi, especially Penicillium, to develop, which is the second most common fungi genera in our environmental climate. Now this storage room has been repaired after construction works, and the elevated levels of humidity have been precluded. Items have been stored in new acid-free cardboard boxes, and the air has been successfully disinfected with UV light. The novelties of the museum collection: textile, leather, and other materials items were researched. The research showed alarming results. Fungi presents were found on all 7 researched items. On these 7 items, 9 from 11 fungi genera were discovered, most of all, like before, Penicillium and Mucor. These presence of fungi proves that the storage conditions before items arrived in the museum have not been in good conditions. To demonstrate this better, we have selected different items to demonstrate to you. Kukri knife. The item comes to Latvia from Afghanistan. Knife holster is made from wood and plastered with cotton textile that has been embroidered with herbal motifs. An embroidered textile line has been sewn onto the top part of the holster. Embroidery has been made from golden and silvery threads and colorful cotton threads. For the base of embroidery, a cotton textile has been used. The textile of the holster was very dirty, with strains. On the metal threads, the mold was visible even without enlargement. And microscopic research also confirmed this. Microbiological research showed 4 genera of fungi: Penicillium, Mucor, Aspergillus, and Aureobasidium, also sterile mycelium. Red Army soldier backpack is considered an important addition to the museum's collection because previously there wasn't that sort of an item in the collection. The history of the backpack is related to the warfare in Latvia in 1945. It had been used for diversion and sabotage at the back of the Red Army's transport. For an extended period, the item was in a special capsule, but not really in vacuum. With the air left in the capsule, in the moment it was shot, new air supplies was practically impossible. The item was very dirty, but there was no visible damages by the mold. A lot of varied materials were used in manufacturing this backpack, like leather, cotton, linen, and cardboard. Microbiological research showed 6 fungi genuses on more than one backpack's material: Aspergillus, Phoma, Penicillium, also Mucor, Chaetomium, and Trichoderm. Most likely, the changes in environment after the opening of the capsule and the result of human unawareness facilitated the growth of so many various fungi genuses. German Army's bayant with holster. Knife-type bayant with metal holster and leather belt loop was used in German Army in 1930s and 1940s. Together with 2 other similar items, this bayant arrived in museum collection in 2016 from State Revenue Service of the Republic of Latvia. On this item, the small mold stains on the leather was visible. The developmental process of mold, especially the developmental of hives and spores, is clearly visible in the microscopic research. Microbiological research showed 2 fungi presents, Penicillium and Chaetomium. Also in both other bayants, leather details, Chaetomium fungi genera were discovered. It affirms that the environmental conditions of the leather items were unfavorable before the arrival in the Latvian War Museum's collection. Unfortunately, we don't have more details information about where the items have been stored before the arrival in the museum. Winter greatcoat with the sheepskin lining arrives in the museum collection in 2009. It belonged to General Robert Stambītis, who wore it in 1930s. In the front and in the right arm sleeve of the greatcoat, a little gray dot-like stains who looked like mold were visible, and microbiological research showed 4 fungi genera: Mucor, Penicillium, Aspergillus, and Chaetomium. After the cleaning of the item, it was possible to see that intensity of the stains has decreased, but the mold has already degraded the color tone of the woolen fibers. The item was disinfected with ethanol and UV light. A recurrent microbiological test still showed the presence of the fungi on the front and on the right arm sleeves of the greatcoat. Only the back of the greatcoat was decontaminated and cleaned from the fungi pollution. The national flag of Latvia. This item arrives at the museum collection in 2016 during the exhibition Latvian National Armed Forces in International Mission. The flag was in the Kabul airport in Afghanistan for half a year in 2014. The flag was manufactured industrially from nylon. It arrives to the museum very dirty with holes and at the end of the flag. There was a discussion about this flag between the specialists of the museum, whether to clean it or not, and if it would be left dirty, it would give an expression of more realistic war zone impression for the exhibition's visitors. And microbiological research showed 2 fungi presents, Mucor and Trichoderm. Latvian Army's boots. Latvian Army soldier boots were worn in 1930s. Original footwear from interwar period is relatively rarely preserved, which is the reason why they have prominent place within the museum collection. These boots are important because we have known the manufacturing place and the name of the factory. And mold damages were visible, and microbiological research also showed 3 genera of fungi, Mucor, Penicillium, and Rhodotorula. The gymnast's hat. The Riga State Second Gymnasium gymnasist Jānis Slaidiņš hat. He wore it in 1930s when he was studying there in 1946. Together with other Baltic state legionnaires, he was extradited from Sweden to USSR. The hat arrives at the museum collection in 2016, and already visually it was possible to see several damages to all of that hat's material. Microscopical research showed that the mold is on the cap peak and on the leather triangle on the inside of the hat. Unfortunately, microbiological research was made after the item was conserved, disinfected with UV lamp, and when the mold was not visible anymore. But research showed 3 fungi present: Aspergillus, Penicillium, and Mucor. Fungi genera were on various hats materials: cotton velvet, cotton lining, leather triangle, and cap peak. Leather boxes and shoes. These items were selected here because they portray things said at the beginning of the paper about the way how the collection was made and complemented in the Latvian Socialist Republic's Museum of Revolution. Box with brooch is a gift to the Latvia Supreme Council from Estonian Supreme Council, and it arrived at the museum in 1965. Before the microbiological research, it was already visible that the box has been infected with mold. The more intensive strains are within the outer perimeter of the box and on one of the 4 side edges. Microbiological research also showed 3 fungi present: Penicillium, Chaetomium, and Acremonium. After the disinfection with UV lamp, repeated analysis showed the presence of only 1 fungi genera, Penicillium. Shoes were manufactured in 1958 in Model House of Riga. These shoes most likely arrived in the museum's collection because they were manufactured in one of the most famous fashion design brands in USSR, and this manufacturer was well known for its high quality standards. Only 1 little white stain on suit gave the conservator suspicion about fungi pollution. Microbiological research showed 3 fungi present: Penicillium, Chaetomium, and Acremonium. After disinfection with ethanol and UV lamp, samples showed again only 1 fungi genera, Penicillium. Both of these items were stored in one of the basement storage rooms. Sanitary flag from the First World War. It was a part of the museum's permanent exhibition from 1995 until 2015. Conservators noticed visible gray strains in various places, but in this case, the visual picture was deceptive because this was one of the 5 items on which fungi genera were not present. About acknowledgements, we would like also to thank Doctor in Biology, Visma Nikolaev, who is also my supervisor doing the research, and also the State Capital Foundation of Latvia, also our photographer Walter Slācis. And what I would like to say at the end, a lot of different disinfection methods have been developed to prevent the process of biodegradation created by fungi. Chemicals, UV light, gamma rays, microwaves, even increased temperature. Unfortunately, many of these methods are not applicable on the textile leather items of the museum. Therefore, the conservator is very limited in his fight with further development of fungi and their created biodegradation process. That is why it is important to emphasize and to remind to specialists the importance of the environment and adequate constant storage conditions like temperature, humidity, and air circulation, in the museum storage rooms, not only for textile leather materials, but to the all museum materials. Still, the question about whether in museum collection there even should be items with fungi pollution is an important and accurate one. The best case scenario, a specialist should research microbiologically every item before it comes into the museum collection. And the last conclusion about this work would be that every museum should try to protect their collections from this, let's say, this bad biodegradation process. to save our cultural heritage to our next generations, because people without the knowledge of their past, origin, and culture is like a tree with no roots. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.